Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. In this week's show, we look at the line between the media and the courts. But first, Sam Mulgrew has the source.
It's less than 150 days till Aotearoa's largest sporting event kicks off. More than 85,000 eager, cashed-up foreigners are heading our way to deal a harsh blow to our tottering transport network for the 6-week Rugby World Cup orgy to spend, it's hoped, more than $1 billion foreign dollars. 2,500 visitors will be media. The 12 Cup stadiums have been upgraded around the country, including a massive $240 million injection to fit 60,000 souls into Eden Park. But if you don't get one of the almost 1.5 million game tickets, fan zones with associated plastic attractions are already taking shape, along with massive 2D and 3D screens, bars and lounges. These days though, you've probably got all that at home, and a heater, and your beer won't cost $10 a bottle. Equivalent to 63% of the world's population watched the last World Cup, according to IRB Hype, in 238 countries, which is 35 more than actually exist. Here on Earth, that is.
Oh.
In New Zealand, you'll find all this rugby hard to avoid. Sky watchers can see all 48 matches in live high definition. The rest of us, though, only get 16 matches live on free-to-air. But the 4 biggest games will be live on 5 different channels. And just to make it special, Auckland has appointed 15 World Cup ambassadors. Just like a rugby team, right? Over it already? Buck up. Remember, this isn't a country, it's a stadium of 4 million.
Charges from the police raids of October 15, 2007, the subject of much claim and counterclaim in the media, will finally come to court on May 30th. But that hardly means things have gone quiet till then.
We awoke to find that the whole valley had been shut down.
The evidence that we're reading of in the paper today would suggest that they intend achieving that political goal by force of arms.
Terrorism is about enemies within.
America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism.
The operation has been looking at training camps involving individuals with firearms and other weapons.
The Maori rights are under attack. Stand up, fight back! The rights are under attack. Stand up, fight back!
Te hara hara kau no kuno tamiti hara kau te hara no tūboy. Ko te hara, ko te karauna, ko te kāwana, ko te ture.
I have advised the Commissioner that I am unable to authorise the prosecutions that have been sought under the Terrorism Suppression Act.
That's a selection of scenes from Operation 8, Deep in the Forest, which has been seen in the past week by film festival audiences in Wellington and Auckland. The documentary tells the story of the anti-terror raids and their aftermath from the perspective of activists caught up in the case. But with the trial so close, are the film's makers themselves in contempt of court? Auckland University law professor Bill Hodge told the Dominion Post they might be, and he only saw the trailer. At issue is the rule of sub judice, which says that when a case is before the courts, no one may comment on it in a way that may prejudice the outcome. I'll discuss that and other recent cases with a media lawyer. But first I'm joined by Operation 8's directors, Abby King-Jones and Errol Wright. Welcome to you both. Thanks for coming. Now, when did you start making this film and why did you do it?
I guess on October the 15th, I saw the news like most other New Zealanders. It seemed really scary. You know, the police action seemed very aggressive. I thought it was interesting on the press release that how Broad gave on the night, that he kind of brought in the spectre of terrorism. I just remembered thinking they've just raided 60 houses. They won't have even had time to assemble the evidence, yet that idea was being put forward. So I guess it was just from there starting to film events, protests, meetings, symposiums, and just to, I guess, really from a document, just to document those initially.
Did you have any idea you'd be spending so long doing it?
No, not at the time. When the raids originally happened, they kind of the idea was that the trial was going to be in a year's time, you know. But
so originally, this might have been the film that came out after the trial.
Yeah, well, in terms of the timing of the film, really it's just been that we've finished it now. We had initially hoped that we'd finish it in time for last year's International Film Festival. That was optimistic. So we'd finished it now, and the World Cinema Showcase was coming up, so we submitted it, and that's where it's screening at the moment. What
was your legal advice on going out with the film? Because, as I noted earlier, people like Bill Hodge have said this may be in contempt, it's so close to the trial.
Yeah, we've had a media lawyer look at the film very closely, and our advice has been that we're fine in terms of contempt, because we never actually asked anyone in the film, the defendants, what was going on at these supposed camps, because that information is suppressed in terms of the upcoming trial. Errol filmed a bit of pre-trial court proceedings that were given suppression orders, and we didn't even bother to log that material. So the film is really about what happened on the day for the people who were targeted, and looking at possibly why the raids took place in terms of the social, political and historical contexts.
There is, would be fair to say that there is a viewpoint on the validity of the charges, you know, implied in the film. I mean, there's the implication even of that evidence may have been fabricated, or that there's possibly been police agent provocateur.
There was a police informant who was outed in 2008 who had been supplying information to the Special Investigation Group. So we look at that in the film, but again, we don't look at any evidential matters relating to the case itself.
Yeah, what I would also say about that is that we use the events and the story of what's occurred to the people since the raids as a starting point to branch off and look at different related areas such as police culture, surveillance, colonisation and the importation of the war on terror to Aotearoa. So we use that as, you know, in terms of, we've got a ex-undercover agent, Patrick O'Brien, giving us his take on the raids and what occurred, and his reaction was that, well, when he heard about the napalm, because of his experience being an undercover agent, he thought, okay, well, possibly that was put there by an agent provocateur because that's what he used to do. So we're not saying that, you know, in terms of, he also talks about corruption in the police force. We're not saying that specific people or anyone to do with the case or the operation are corrupt, or there have been agent provocateurs involved in the case.
It has happened in
but
the past.
it could be a possibility, and it has happened in the past. So it's just kind of a broadening out of the picture that people are able to get a better understanding of how the police operate in New Zealand, really.
Now, I've said to you already that there was one part of the film where I thought it crossed a line, and it's quite a pivotal point in the film. It's where the Solicitor General, David Collins, says he will not be bringing charges under the Terrorism Suppression Act, and we don't see all of that. Perhaps now we could actually see the part we don't see in the film.
The police have successfully brought to an end what were very disturbing activities. That the police did so without a single shot being fired, injury or loss of life, is a tremendous reflection on the professionalism and the integrity of the New Zealand Police. I am of the view that at this stage there is insufficient evidence to establish to the very high standard required that a group or entity was planning or preparing to commit a terrorist act as that term is defined in the legislation.
Why did you make that edit? Because it seems to me you made it because it maybe didn't fit with the narrative of the film.
I guess we've got the Solicitor General in that press conference, and then at the end of the film we have the Solicitor General in the Fairfax trial, and they're both at kind of opposite ends. So it was a difficult choice to cut. Obviously we have to cut things because we don't, you know, we're working within a kind of 2-hour time frame, but the two didn't gel. So I guess it was.
In terms of the press conference, as we saw in the clip, the Solicitor General is saying, well, there isn't enough evidence to bring under this legislation, and yet on the other hand, he felt that the police were justified.
Yeah, he referred to very disturbing activities.
Yeah. I guess we kind of had the view that perhaps he was in a very difficult position, and maybe this is a supposition, maybe he was keeping both camps happy. But the fact is that, as you see in the film, we have the Fairfax contempt trial where the line of questioning that he is taking is ultimately questioning the validity of the intercepts that the police gathered and then put into the affidavit, which was then subsequently printed by the Dominion Post. So, you know, as filmmakers making a narrative, a story, at the point in the film where you see the Solicitor General's decision and that press conference, it's being told from the point of view of a defendant who, at that point in the story, has been in prison for close to 4 weeks. And so she's saying, okay, I heard that we weren't going to be charged, and I ran...
Which is a very powerful moment.
It's a very dramatic moment. So, you know, we didn't have the time to kind of cover all angles with him. So we did talk about it a lot. And then also, as Errol has mentioned, we didn't feel that we could reconcile that in terms of him being a character, because then he seems to take the opposite view at the end of the film, where he's actually questioning the intercepts that the police had gathered. So, in that sense, it's he's sort of an enigma in terms of his position on the case on the whole, I think.
I gather that the Crown Prosecutor has spoken to David Collins, the Solicitor General, about your film. Have you heard anything?
We've heard nothing. We read an article in the press saying that that was to be the case. We've heard nothing, and in terms of the film being possibly in contempt or prejudicial, it's only really been the media that have picked it up and made an issue of it, which is fine, you know, that's valid, but we're not expecting to hear anything. That's where we are at the moment.
Abby King-Jones and All Right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
After the break, the news media promised not to speculate on a sensational murder case and then speculate all over it.